Now, does it matter who you have on your banknotes, or do you only care that you have enough cash to pay your bills? Well, in Britain soon, the only woman on the back of our banknotes, obviously we still have the Queen on the front, will disappear to be replaced by another important male historical figure, in this case Britain's wartime leader Winston Churchill. It's led to complaints that women are again being written out of history. And that's an argument Caroline Criado-Perez makes, and Caroline campaigns to get more women on banknotes. That's when she's not trying to get more female experts on TV. Great to have you with us. We're also joined by Thomas Hockenhull, who's curator of the Modern Money exhibition at the British Museum, and by Charlie Waterhouse, designer at the Brixton Pound, a special currency used in just one area of South London. Right, does this matter?
Yes, absolutely does matter. I mean, it's obviously one small issue, but it's one of many that have been taking place throughout history. There are so many great women who have been suggested to us since starting the campaign, which I'm sure most people haven't heard of. And, you know, even I, sort of big feminist campaigner who's been banging on about it, hadn't heard of these women. It's because we don't learn about them. I mean, the history curriculum has just practically wiped women out of it. Women represent something like 15% of statues. We're just not seen in the public eye, and when women aren't seen, it sort of sends a really damaging message about what women have achieved in the past, what we can achieve in the present, and how we're just generally valued in society.
Tom, does it matter?
I think it's historically interesting. To a point, yes, I think it matters. Whether that impact spreads to banknotes is something I'm not really in a position to comment upon. I think typically women have featured on banknotes in the past, but, well, in fact, I'd say that more women have featured on banknotes than men, but of course, they're usually allegorical figures. They're not necessarily actual historical figures.
And I want you to explain to me what the Brixton Pound is, Charlie.
The Brixton Pound is a complementary currency, so it runs in parallel to sterling, but in Brixton, in about 300 independent businesses, you can go to the exchange points, swap sterling for the Brixton Pound, and go.
And who have you got on your notes?
Right. Well, we've got 3 men, 1 woman. We've got Violet Szabo on the 20. We've got Len Garrison on the £1 note. We've got Lol Deng, who's a basketball player, on the 5, and David Bowie on the 10. I'd just like to sort of echo that in doing the Brixton Pound, it was absolutely crucial that we had a proper representative selection of people on there.
Caroline, I want to ask you this. Do you know who is on the 10, the 20 and the £50 notes?
Yes, I do. You want me to say who they are?
It's just that I will like to, OK, you're going to pass the test, and let's not go through it.
Well, obviously I would know, but you're talking about people not necessarily noticing who's on banknotes.
Do you know what? We in the office, we knew we'd been discussing this, and I said to everyone, right, who's on the 10, who's on the 20, and who's on the 50? And we came up with names that had been there before, but we couldn't remember who was on them because no one takes any notice.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, you know, Mervyn King got it wrong himself. He thought it was Dickens when it was actually Darwin on the £10 note, which was obviously very amusing. But that's not really the point. You don't have to necessarily consciously take in who these people are. I mean, you know, we know from studies in advertising that it's not about consciously thinking, oh, yes, I'm going to buy that brand of dishwasher. It's about the way these messages pass into our subconscious. And the message that gets passed out in our culture is that if you want to be appreciated for what you've done and recognised publicly, you better be a white man.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that's ridiculous. Money is the one thing that touches everybody. We might not all see the same films or art or appreciate, but we all have money in our pockets, and I think that sends a terrible message out to people.
And of course, historically, it always has been used to spread a message. You know, coinage has always been that one way to disseminate one's image, whether you're a political figure or a leader. I mean, in some ways, I think, just to broaden this for a second, it's also quite interesting, the figure that is going to replace Elizabeth Fry on the notes, and it's going to be someone who, for the first time in British history, on a note, was an overtly political figure. He might have been a polymath, a statesman, but he was also a politician.
And so that's interesting, that if you look at the history of banknotes, I mean, obviously they are used to project a picture of the leader of that particular country or whatever, but presumably they use historical figures or scenes from battles which support a nation's narrative.
To a certain extent, historically, the use of historical figures on notes is actually a comparatively recent phenomenon. I mean, to take example of the first woman on the banknote. I believe it was actually Cleopatra, who she's an historical figure, who was featured posthumously on a note, quite considerably posthumously actually. And thereafter, in the 70s, it was only in the 1970s that historical figures started appearing on British notes, with Shakespeare appearing first. The first image of a real person to appear on a Bank of England note was the Queen.
So prior to that, was there not on a £5 note? Was there not a picture of George VI or George V or?
No, you might have had an image of Britannia.
Right.
But no, you wouldn't have had any kings. The kings did appear on other notes, for example, British Caribbean territories.
I think in relation to what we were just talking about spreading messages, I mean, the Bank of England does actually acknowledge that this is a feature of the banknotes. They say that they're in this privileged position to be able to spread the message about who we value from our historic, artistic and scientific legacy. But of course, with privilege comes responsibility, and the responsibility is not to cut people out of our narrative.
Isn't there a degree to which this could be kind of seen as tokenism? I mean, should we have a proportion of banknotes where there are disabled people on the back, or from the ethnic minorities? I mean, how do you do this?
Well, I don't think it's tokenism. I think currency is a window into the issuer. So you look at the current banknotes, and so especially when the fiver is replaced, and we see a patriarchal society that is all about sort of economics and politics and all of that kind of stuff that actually bears little resemblance to our multifaceted country.
But don't you think, just to say it shows a patriarchal society is simplistic in the sense that Darwin, Origin of Species? I mean, is that a sign of a patriarchal society that he's on the back of a banknote, or some of the other great historical figures that we've had that have been there? Adam Smith, great economist, or whatever.
Well, yeah, we've got Adam Smith. We're going to have Winston Churchill. We've got two blokes from the Bank of England on the 50. I mean, what does that say? It doesn't say anything to me about my life.
I think the point is that it's, well, certainly from the perspective of our campaign, hasn't been to say that any of the people who are on there, apart perhaps from Sir John Houblon, who really no one's heard of, it shouldn't be on there. It's more about saying that we're choosing the same type of people again and again.
Yeah.
And that there are other people who've contributed in a fantastic way, and to return it to women again, women have historically been overlooked, Rosalind Franklin being the paradigmatic example.
Brilliant. Look, we'll leave the argument there. You've made it very clearly. Thank you very much indeed for all being with us. Really interesting topic. Who knew that a banknote could stir such controversy?